this is Joe Bolen, and today we're going to do part 2 of understanding a module. I have a program that we've been working on for a long time, clear back when we started video number 11, designing a program. And we started out designing a very simple calculator. Well, our calculator is now getting pretty good, and we're now going to take advantage of the concept of a module in this program to make it even better. So let's go in and take a look at the code that we originally had with our very simple calculator and then make it even better. Here I have on the screen our very simple calculator. I've renamed it at this point Simple Calculator because it's getting a little bit better. And I'll key in 15 and I will also key in 35 for a second number. We'll do addition, which will give us 50. We'll do subtraction, which will give us minus 20. We'll do multiplication, which gives 525. We'll do division, which gives us 0.429. And of course, our clear button will clear out our information. So we basically have a nice, very good working calculator. Nothing fancy, but it does work well. Also, if I key in something incorrectly, for example, I key in Joe for my first number, I'm going to get a sound, and also get the air provider will pop up saying numeric value is required. And until I fix that, I will have a problem. And also, if I tried it down here and typed in 2, I'd get the same message, once again, numeric value required. And until I get those fixed, I can't process my buttons. In fact, I can hit them, nothing will happen until they're corrected, and I get them back into the correct values that need to be there for processing. So let's take a look at our code and see how to make it even better. Okay, I have on the screen the header information about the program, and you can see the form out at Imgur. There's the link to that, and also you'll see the original code for a very simple calculator down below. And the new code that I'm creating in this particular exercise is also out at PaySpin at the second location at PaySpin. So if you want to enjoy following along, do so, and then come back and take a look and go to those links. Let's take a look at the code itself. As we come down and we're processing, let's say the add button. Let's stop here at the add section. We're coming in and we declare a first and second number variables as double data type to receive in the numeric values that we're entering in for our text box. And then the sum, in this case for adding, is the result of the adding of those two numbers together. Then we have some validation of our text box to make certain we do in fact have a numeric value. And then after we know we have numeric values and pass through the validation area, we're going to process those strings from the first and second number text boxes and convert them to double. And we can do this very quickly because we know that at this point they are numeric and that we will not get an error at this point in the code. So we then get them into our double data type. We then process and calculate the sum together to get the sum, and then we output that. In this case, we're using the toString method to convert it back from a double to a string value to put in our text property of the result value label, and we're using the N3 format identifier to allow for 3 decimal places. Well, we do that for everything we have in here. We do it for the subtraction. The differences we're using difference for subtraction, and the multiplication we're using product, and for division we're using the quotient. Well, let's make this a little bit tighter code and take advantage of what we've been able to code into this. Well, first of all, we're processing and getting information into numeric values, which we need to do. But do we necessarily need to do it here? And do we need to do it again to make certain we've got it in the right values and process it? Well, we can reduce this down a lot by taking advantage of a module. So let's create a module in this code, and I'm going to come over to the project, right click on it, and say, in this case, I'm going to hit add, and I'll take the option to add a module, and I'm going to create a module called calculator methods. And it'll have the extension of VB as the type, and we have now a method, calculator methods module ready to go for processing. Now, if you'll remember back in our program, we had to bring in things and process it, get it converted to double data type, and then do our processing. Well, let's create a function that does something very similar to it, and see where we can then take out from our code in our form class processing to make it more streamlined, and move our business logic to our methods module and not have it into our graphical user interface class of main form. So I'm going to declare a public function, and this public function I'm going to call add two numbers. And the add two numbers is going to bring in by val, which is a copy of the value that's being passed in. And I'm going to call it this first operand as string. And I'm going to also do a by val second operand as string, and I'll bring that into my function, and my function then is going to return back a double data type. So I'll say double. Now allow me to process fractions and decimal points. Now in this, I'm going to take the two variables, first operand and second operand, which are my parameters, and I'm going to convert them to double data type. So I'm going to do a dim. I'm going to call it num1 as double, and I'm going to assign it by converting using the .NET convert class to double, and I'm going to convert to double the first operand. So I bring in a string, I convert it to a double data type, and put it into my newly declared num1 field. I'll also do that for the second operand. Using the convert class of the .NET framework. Okay, now we've got those converted to numbers. Then I'm going to return back my double data type. In this case, I'm going to return back num1 plus num2. And there's my function for adding two numbers. Now I'm going to go ahead and create subtraction, multiplication, and division as well. So I'm going to copy this very quickly, and we'll paste these in and change them. And this one will be called subtract two numbers. And the difference is I change my operation to subtraction, and then the third one I have in here will be multiplication. I'm going to call it multiply to num, and I'll change that to an asterisk for multiplication. And then the last one will be division, and I'll call it divide two numbers. And here we're going to make the assumption that everything's okay, and we divide it and return back the result of dividing the two. So we have in our module, which is publicly available to everything in our project, the add two number, subtract two number, multiply two number. Well, let's put plural on that. It sounds a little bit better. Add two numbers, subtract two numbers, multiply two numbers, and divide two numbers. There we go. So we've got that saved in our calculator method module. Now let's go back to our form and pull in these functions into our form. The module will be the area where our calculations are done, where our business logic resides, and our main form then will just deal with the graphical user interface layer of our project. So let's take a look at our add button. Well, first of all, we do not need to worry about declaring our variables anymore, so I can wipe this whole section out very quickly. That gets me rid of a couple of lines of code at that point. And then I do not need to worry about converting the numbers or processing it. In fact, let's just go down here and take out a good chunk of code at this point. I'm going to come back up and wipe out that. And what I'm going to have now is my function that I have, which is add two numbers. And remember, I had to pull in my text box. In this case, it's a first number text box text, and the second one is the second number text box dot text, and that whole thing will be to a toString on that when we process it. So I'm passing in the argument of first number text box text, which is a string, and second number text box text is string. It will return back, after it calculates the information, my double data type, and then I'll take my double data type and turn it back into a string and put it in my text property of my result value. And you'll see how much I have reduced down the code for this project. Let's do it also for the other one. Let's take this out. Get rid of that code. I'll get rid of all this other code in here at this point. And I will now use my process to do a subtraction. So I'll do the subtract two numbers. Once again, I'll use the first text box text and the second text box text, and put that value in there. Might have spelled something wrong here. Let me retype this. There we go. First number text box text. There we go. Now let's do this also for the multiplication. Get rid of that information we don't need anymore. And we'll get rid of this information. And in this case, we're going to do multiply two numbers. And we're going to use first text box and I think I called it first number. Let me see on that. first number text box text, yes. Text box text, and second number text box text. Okay, we see that in there. And the last one, we'll get rid of this information for division and wipe out this information, which we don't need anymore because we're doing it in our function. And we're going to divide two numbers. And in there we have first number text box dot text and second number text box dot text. Okay, we've got everything set. Now we need to check and make certain everything's good. And let's save it and try it out. Okay, well, we got our form working okay. Let's see if our calculations work. We'll enter in again 15 and 35 for our two values, and we'll check to see if addition works. Ah, it works. Subtraction, good, works right. Multiplication works, and division works. And of course, our clear button, which we didn't code anything differently, will still work. Now, the reason we can get away with that change in our code is because by the time we've got through our validation that we had originally in our code, we know we have a numeric value to process. And so I can safely go ahead and pass a string value into the different calculations or functions because I know that they're already safely a numeric value, and once they come into the calculator method and be processed, I won't have an error on the convert to double operation. They will convert fine, and we'll get the values num1 and num2 for each of the functions. Then I come down and I process it, return it back as a double data type, and then use the toString method to get it to a string for the output to the text property of my label. Now, one area we might still need to look at and modify is division. We probably do not want to allow for a 0 for the num2 value, but it will work okay and be fine in visualbasic.net. In fact, we can see that when I try this. I can put in, let's say, 45 divided by 0 and do the division, and I'll get infinity for the answer, which is perfectly acceptable, although sometimes a little uncomfortable for those who are in grade school still. But for as we advance in our math level skills, infinity would be the correct answer, because as we approach closer to 0, the value becomes exceedingly large till the point it becomes defined as infinity in our math. So we've basically simplified our code. We've reduced our program down to 4 different public available shared functions in our module that we have, and we've taken out a lot of code in our original program that we do not need any longer because we have a clean data coming in. We can process it very cleanly, let the module be the area where we do our business logic and calculations, and allow the main form class in this particular program to deal only with the GUI level and validation of data coming in. So we've made this program much, much better, and you'll see that it's much simpler to look at and use. It works still the same. The functionality has not really been changed, but the quality of our code has. And as you look at this as a model or prototype for other types of programs you might be creating in the future, you want to think about the idea of how can I take advantage of shared functions outside my graphical user interface layer class and do processing. Sometimes we'll do validation outside the class level of the form. In this case, we're doing a validation that we do have numeric values before we process in the form. But then once we have knowledge that we have good numeric values and pass our error provider checks, then we go to our module where we do our calculations and then return the values back to the graphical user interface to be formatted and displayed on the screen or to a printer. So remember, we want to try to keep things modular. We want to keep them hidden from each other. But in this case, the module, while it's available throughout the program, is appropriate because we have need for a kind of logic that occurs that's not tied specifically to any one screen. So take advantage of the module. You've seen how we used it in this particular program, and in the last video we talked about where we use it and how we use it and the availability and accessibility of its variables and also its methods or functions. So take advantage of a module. Use it where it's needed and appropriate. Remember, a module is always going to be available throughout our code, and if we use public access modifiers to our methods, functions, and variables in our module, they also will be available throughout all our code, and we can go to the module and find all the information we need to see or change anything if we need to update our program. So until next time, take care, get your hands dirty in the code, and be good.